Hi, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to this new episode of the RiseUp Radio. And today is a very, very special day. And we have a very special guest with us. His name is Tom Ulbrich. Tom, welcome to the RiseUp Radio. It's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me and thank you for having me. I look forward to our conversation.
Our pleasure, Tom. So, folks, just a brief introduction about Tom, and he's gonna tell us a lot more about his professional journey. But to introduce him a little bit, so Tom is a leader with 2 decades of experience behind him in the fields ranging from entrepreneurship to teaching and social innovation. And he has spent years in higher education preparing the next generation of leaders. And he's currently serving as the CEO of Goodwill of Western New York, bringing his commitment to social innovation and entrepreneurial spirit to life by leading an organization that actually supports people in achieving their true potential. Right, Tom? So that's a very, very exciting and illustrious career you've had. So why don't you walk us through that a bit?
Yeah, yeah, sure. No, I'm happy. I'm happy to share with you sort of my eclectic journey to how I got to where I am today. Excuse me. So I started in a family business. My first degree was actually in ornamental horticulture and landscape design. So my parents owned a large garden center, ornamental horticulture business, landscape business, and I spent 20 years in that business. And as part of the work that I did with that business, I was very involved with the National Federation of Independent Business in New York State, which is really a lobbying group for small business.
Mm-hmm.
It was very involved in that and had decided after being 20 years in, I want to become an elected official. And
Okay.
with that, decided I had to go back and get a little bit more education, went back to University of Buffalo, got my
Hmm.
MBA. Long story short, ran for office, lost. And in
Okay.
that process, they had been talking to the University of Buffalo where I had graduated, and they had this part of the School of Management called the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership,
Hmm.
which they asked if I'd be interested in applying for the executive director position there. I did. I had multiple businesses. I set them up with leaders. I had the garden center business, which I had taken over from my parents with my brother. I'd also
Mm-hmm.
started an e-commerce company that
Okay.
I developed myself and set them up to lead the daily operations of the business. Still own them. Went to University of
Got
Buffalo
it.
and had a 12-year career there. In I was a professor in the MBA program, taught entrepreneurship, ran the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, became an assistant dean in the School of Management and the School of Social Work, and then got recruited to Goodwill, which I had zero interest at the time. And they were pretty persistent. And I sat down with the board and we really talked about how Goodwill is a perfect example of social entrepreneurship, which is a
Hmm.
concept that I talked about a lot and taught
Hmm.
because we have the
Hmm.
ability here to generate our own revenue
Yeah.
to support our workforce development work. So, long story short, they challenged the entrepreneur in me to say, why don't you come out of academia instead of doing this on paper? Why don't you in the real world? So here I am, and I've been here in Mail. I've been here 5 years. And one interesting aside for our conversation
Mm-hmm.
today, I it signed May or January of 2020. I signed my letter of intent to come here. Told them I wanted
Okay.
to finish out the year, my semester with at the university. So I
Hmm.
came here May 1st, 2020. From the time I signed the letter, this little thing
Okay.
called COVID popped up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I walked in May 1st, 2020, in the middle of COVID. Our entire operation was shut down. 237 out of 240 employees were at
Wow.
home, furloughed. So that was my entrance into Goodwill of Western New York.
Talk about baptism by fire.
Yes, yeah, and that's how you learn to lead, right? You're always learning how to
Absolutely.
lead, but that's
Absolutely.
one of the ways you certainly expand
Yeah.
your ability, I would say.
Yeah. Awesome. So, Tom, tell us a little bit about Goodwill as well before we dig deeper into your
Sure.
journey.
Yeah, so Goodwill of Western New York is one of many Goodwills people are familiar with across many parts of the world, but most of them are here in the United States and Canada. So we
Mm-hmm.
take people's gently used clothing, We resell
Hmm.
them in thrift stores. We, you know,
Okay.
go through them. We turn that money, those donations, into dollars and cents, and then we
Hmm.
take that money and we use it for workforce training development in our community. So in our community, we train
Hmm.
people for careers in advanced manufacturing and technology jobs. So not just a
Okay.
job, but we try to get people on a career path where they
Yeah.
can have an upward mobility and start to gain some
Right.
opportunities, gain generational wealth over time.
Right. Awesome, awesome. Cool. So Tom, I'm all set to go deeper. So folks, what we are gonna do today with Tom is explore his leadership journey. So Tom, leadership is a constantly evolving journey, right? For all
Sure.
of us, primarily, right? And over 2 decades, I'm sure you would have seen a lot of changes happening. Where you started as an individual contributor, then became a leader, and currently you're heading this lovely organization, right? So we're gonna go through your entire journey step by step, and we're gonna visit some real life stories and experiences that you've had. Maybe even some mistakes, because nobody learns better from mistakes, right? And it's even
Right.
better to
Right.
learn from other people's mistakes as well, right? So I
I'm
think that is
I'm
where
happy
our
to
audience
share
is gonna
those.
be. Yeah. So we're gonna be really looking forward to those nuggets from you.
Sure.
All right. So let's go to down the memory lane, right? And this is a question I like to ask every leader I speak with. What was it like when you actually started managing teams for the first time? Were you ready for it?
Wow.
What were the
Wow. Yeah.
emotions? Tell me about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I go back and think about it, I would have been in my early 20s when I first
Hmm.
managed people. And I won't use the word lead because I was
Hmm.
only learning what it meant to lead. But manage people, manage outcomes, manage
Yeah.
processes, right? And I would say, looking back, I was woefully unprepared um,
Hmm.
for that opportunity. One, it was within a family business, which has some unique
Yep.
challenges because you're the son of the owner, and nobody wants to listen to you or believes you should be there. So that was one challenge. And I think the little preparation I did have um, about leading was from my years of playing sports in high school. So
Okay.
I learned that's where I began to lead, where
Hmm.
I had a high school coach that um, I played football and swam. I wasn't great at anything, but I loved to try to inspire and motivate people. And a coach early on in my life pulled me aside and said, "You're going to be captain." I'm like, "I'm going to be captain of like I of this captain of the swimming team." I'm like, I'm not the best swimmer. And I always equated leader, captain with best, right? You're really good at something. And that inspired me early on to be interested in leadership,
Wow.
which, sort of even to this day, I think back to that person. And
Hmm.
we as leaders have those opportunities to be that person, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Yeah.
really, really can have a positive impact on somebody's life.
Right.
And that was really a transformational moment for me to begin to
Right.
start to
Right.
learn how to lead.
Cool. So I have a lot of follow-up questions here, right? But I'm gonna
Sure.
pick up one particular one to begin with, right? You said you were not ready
Yeah.
in your mind. So what was it that made you feel that, hey, I'm not yet ready to lead people or lead teams?
Yeah. I went out, and again, this is me reflecting. At the time, I would have had
Yeah.
no clue. But
Yeah.
reflecting back, I think number one is I wanted everybody to think like me. I was really confused. Like, why don't people just get this?
Hmm.
Why am I having to explain myself, 10 or 20
Hmm.
times? So
Hmm.
really not having a basic understanding about we're all unique individuals.
Yeah.
And part
Hmm.
of a leader's job is to figure out how to inspire individuals, especially. I think another thing I'd say, I just didn't know what I didn't know. Um,
Hmm.
I walked in the situation. I did not have a lot of employees, but probably thinking back around 40, which as a
Hmm.
young man, that was a lot of people to try to
Yeah.
manage. And it was really understanding, I guess, the psychology of human beings, but more
Yep.
than anything. And I was woefully unprepared for that. So how did I learn? The hard way? The hard way with hard knocks, right? Um,
Right.
is how I learned over time.
So You must have made a lot of mistakes. When did you start to realize that, hey, something is wrong? I'm not going right. Was there a particular instance or an incident that happened that made you reflect deeply?
Um, yeah, I think back to those instances back to sports and stuff, right? But in the work world, I
Hmm.
don't think there was any instance where I
Hmm.
recognized to change something. But what I do remember and do recognize, if you look back through your career, is when something went right, it clicked. So by
Yeah.
mistake, perhaps I did something that was a right move, and you
Hmm.
see the positive response and the ability to move
Yeah.
people and to not lead. I'm sure we'll talk about different styles of leadership, but not
Hmm.
to have to lead by what I would call just purely command and control, but to actually
Hmm.
have people begin to follow you in your
Hmm.
leadership. And I can't
Hmm.
think of an incident, but I can remember those positive, like
I get
light
that.
moments,
I
right?
get
That
that. I
that you
get
just
that.
respond to it.
Right. So you try something and it doesn't work, but you try something and it works, and then you say, hey, you know what? This is how it should be done. And then you keep
Yeah.
repeating that more and
And you
more.
watch other people too, right? Like I
Correct.
would be,
Absolutely.
because I wanted to learn at that point, I would look around and watch what, and you see a good leader, that's what I would do is try to emulate them.
So, who did you watch around that time? Did you have a mentor? Did you have a guide with you, or any model figure that you would look up to?
Yeah. So largely, I would say I learned a lot by reading. And,
Okay.
and again, this would have been in the late 70s, early 80s. So we're going
Mm-hmm.
back
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
pretty far. But I did a lot of reading. I really aligned well with Maxwell's stuff, a lot of
Got
John
it.
Maxwell's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would try to emulate people I would see in the business world that I
Mm-hmm.
really, if I was at a conference or I heard a
Mm-hmm.
speaker. So a
Yeah.
lot of different pieces of things is how I would put together. And I was always
Awesome.
into continuous learning. Really love, and
Awesome.
I still to this day love to learn.
Awesome, awesome. So you mentioned, one particular part, which is as a leader, as a manager, when you start to see impact in people, right? That basically motivates you a lot to do more of it, right? So tell
Right,
us
right,
some of
right.
those instances when that happened, when you were able to transform somebody's life or somebody's work journey of people that were working with you.
Yeah. So I think today, when I think about, and I'm now moving from maybe the thought of management to leadership, right?
Yeah.
So two, as we know, there's all types of discussions around the difference between the two. So where I really learned was the ability when I started to have the ability or notice that it took the ability to create a big vision that
Mm-hmm.
people could get excited about, and you can
Hmm.
inspire people and then
Hmm.
set a direction and be able to move forward from there. So I that happened a little bit in my career, in business. It
Yeah.
happened a lot when I started my e-commerce company. So as we were
Hmm.
getting excited about growing this e-commerce company and watching it grow, but where I
Yeah.
really started to gain some leadership skills, I think, was at the University of Buffalo, leading the
Okay.
Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, which really is leading a whole bunch of other business leaders.
Hmm.
Is These
Hmm.
are all
Hmm.
courses for people that own businesses. So
Correct.
watching people, learning from listening to all of them, going
Hmm.
their struggles, understanding that we all share many of the same struggles, and then kind of
Mm-hmm.
putting the pieces together little by little from there. And
Yeah.
today at Goodwill, gets me excited, I think one of the biggest jobs of a leader is to create leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like McKinsey refers to it as creating a leadership factory. And one of the
Correct.
greatest joys I have today, more towards the end of my career, is building the team that's going to take Goodwill forward when I'm not here, and removing myself from the business and
Yeah.
realizing the business isn't about Tom. The business is about the
Correct.
people and all the
Hmm.
people. And as I watch a young team start to lean into that and own it, that gives me great thrill and a lot of energy is watching other people develop into leaders.
Very nice. And Tom, you have already preempted my next question, and you have given me one principle of your current leadership style. So, one of the things that you're currently focusing is building more leaders, right? So, what are the other principles of your leadership style today?
So I think a lot of the principles of my leadership style, I actually have a leadership philosophy that
Okay.
we print
Please
out.
tell us
And
about it.
yeah, I will. And let me grab it because I've got a few points here, and I'm happy to share this with anybody that wants it. But we look at there's a couple principles that I share with the team and we stick with. One is structure equals freedom. So
Hmm.
I believe that having a very, very clear, well thought out structure enables people to have freedom, not the other way around. So
Which is
a
very
lot of
counterintuitive, Tom, right? People typically think that, hey, you don't need structure for freedom. And this is a very counterintuitive thought to
Yeah,
it.
it's a counter thought because I find when there's structure and people understand what's required of them, they're much
Yeah.
happier as
Yeah.
people. Another thing I believe strongly in is accountability with
Mm.
constant coaching. So we have tried to build cultures with strong accountability, but in parentheses after it, I always say with constant coaching. So meaning I don't want accountability to be punitive. I want it to
Hmm.
be accountability that recognizes we have a challenge and now we're going to coach to that. That being
Yeah.
said, if we've coached you 3, 4, 5 times, the accountability
Mm.
is coming. We're not afraid.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah. Yeah.
afraid to let people go. Another thing really important to me is data driven decision making. So using
Okay.
data wherever possible. Love the concept. We talk about team of teams. As we get
Mm.
bigger, we have to
Mm.
move, our organization gets more complex. We've grown
Yeah.
over the last 4 years from 10 million to 24 million. So
Yeah.
rapid growth. And I believe we have to create a team of teams. And one other one, a couple really quick ones. We talk about part of my philosophy is a culture of continuous learning. We
Okay.
always have to be learning. Every single individual in the organization has to be learning. And then the final one I'll share, I've got an endless pile of them, but the final one I'll share is I really believe in, and I borrow from Peter Diamandis, is
Hmm.
the concept of 10xing things. So how do we not approach something just
Yeah.
from being a little bit better, but how do we 10x it? How do we
Right.
maybe blow up the whole thing? And I found the more we look at projects, problems, challenges that way,
Yeah.
greater results that we tend to get by just looking through that lens. We might not get to 10x, but we get to a lot different area. And then as a leader, I've also found um, if you want people to really get jazzed about the work that they do, create a big vision that they can go after.
Hmm.
A
Hmm.
lot of
Hmm.
leaders, I think, their visions are too small,
Right.
and don't be afraid to share a big vision, or Jim Collins would call it a big, hairy, audacious goal,
Yep.
something that
Yep.
is out there that
Hmm.
maybe you can't make it, but you think you've got a 60, 70% chance.
Yeah.
Work
Yeah.
really hard, we can get there. So
Yeah. So,
those are
Tom,
just a
why
few.
do you think people are afraid of sharing big vision? Are they basically afraid to commit, typically?
I think they're afraid to fail. and and
Yeah.
it and it's
Publicly.
interesting.
They're afraid to fail publicly,
Yeah,
instead,
yeah, I
right?
think the leader's afraid to fail publicly, and again, you can't set crazy visions that nobody will ever make,
Yeah.
but
Correct. Correct.
you want to really, in my opinion, you really want to stretch people to something that's great and above what they ever expected, and you tend to get more out of people. But I think I don't look at failure. That word doesn't mean a lot to me as an
Right. Right.
entrepreneur. I look at failure as learning. I just learned
Correct.
something. So I
Correct.
think many leaders, if you don't sort of have that mindset of failure is just part of life and learning, are
Right.
afraid of setting a big goal because they want to win, or they've got a boss
Right.
above them that,
Correct.
the system basically.
Correct. Correct. But Tom, the counter side is that, a lot of times the teams become a little less receptive to very big ideas also because they sometimes feel insecure in terms of, hey, how are we going to achieve it? Because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, the execution is going to fall on us, right? And
Right.
there always that kind of resistance to fight that, hey, why are we shooting for that big, hairy, audacious goal? Why can't we basically shoot for something lower, right? Has it happened
Right.
to you, or how do you counter
Oh my,
that? Oh,
oh my goodness. So you just might have asked the best question anybody ever asked me. You asked to talk about weaknesses a little bit too, right?
yeah.
So being a person, an entrepreneur with big visions, that is the greatest challenge, right? You can burn out people. So what I've learned
Hmm.
over time is I have to surround myself with people that have operational excellence because I don't
Hmm. Hmm.
necessarily, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
my senior team are the ones that will say, whoa, slow it down, like the vision's
Yeah.
too big. So it's surrounding yourself with the managers that can
Hmm.
actually get the work done. I think of my role as the
Hmm.
visionary,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
and some philosophies are like around strategy with the entrepreneur organizations, EOS, they talk about the implementer, the visionary,
Yeah.
and then having the implementer. So I think it's
Correct.
really, really critical to have the implementer. And I will tell you, here's a great, you asked for a couple lessons learned.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
a great lesson learned. When I was first at Goodwill, we really had a pivot. And again, we've grown more
Hmm.
than doubled, right, in the last 4 years. Because of COVID, we were in all types of problems and trouble and had to kind of find our way forward out of that. So we did create a big vision. As you can see, we're
Yeah.
leading towards it. But when I was first here with the team that was here, a couple hundred people, I was talking about change all the time because change excites me.
Hmm.
When I
Hmm.
learned that even at my age, I learned that word to people that have been in a system is a
It's scary.
horrible, it's a
It's
scary
very
word, and
scary.
it makes people feel like what they did before was bad. And
Correct.
so what I had to do, again, leadership, what did I do? What I had to do was reposition what I was talking about. So
Hmm.
now we always talk about evolution. We're evolving a process.
Wow.
The organization is evolving. So at 60 years old, I learned some really
There you
hard
go.
leadership lessons. And I
You
thought
keep
I thought
learning.
thought I knew what I was doing, but quickly learned like words matter. Words matter a lot.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. So Tom, let's go back to your academic, part of your career, right? And you've worked with a lot of students, you've mentored a lot of students. What are some of the practical ways in which, universities and colleges need to start inculcating leadership mindset, early on? Because I think that's where the breeding ground of leadership is, in a way, right? I'm reminded constantly of my B school where we had a leadership seminar where we went to an army camp for 3 days and we spent and we learned with the army officers in terms of what does it mean to lead in crisis, right?
Right,
So
right.
what do you think, the role of universities is typically in this area?
Yeah. So leadership is, to me, it's similar to entrepreneurship in the fact that it's one thing to read about in a book, and to your point of going to the military and going
Hmm.
through experience, I believe to learn it, you have to experience it.
Hmm.
So experiential activities, I think, are really important. And a lot of universities are
Yeah.
building a lot of
Hmm.
experiential activities into their training. Um, and one of the best ways, especially with undergrads, is around entrepreneurship, giving them
Hmm.
opportunities to think about, creatively solving problems, starting
Yeah.
businesses, what it means to fail, what it means to build a team. So I think anytime you can give students experiential activity along with the book work is great.
Hmm.
It is super, super important.
Hmm. Hmm. Awesome. So, Tom, the landscape is changing very fast, right? We have rapid changes happening in the workplace. We have hybrid work coming in. We have remote work coming in. COVID has taught us, the old books or playbooks don't even exist anymore, right? How is leadership going to change in the future as per you, right? What
Yeah.
would leaders have to change in themselves to be able to lead the future generations as they come?
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer this, but I'm gonna give it a shot because I struggle to this day with remote work, and I probably shouldn't say it out loud. And that is very old
It is
fashioned
hard.
statement, but it's difficult. And I think, again, I think leadership is always evolving, and I think leadership is situational. So I believe that the best leaders sort of morph in and out of the different leadership styles based on the needs of the moment. So, the
Okay.
very basic, very basic leadership style would be command and control, which I had
Hmm.
to apply
Hmm.
when we were in the
Hmm.
middle of COVID. We needed to make
Hmm.
decisions quickly. Now,
Hmm.
at the other aspect, I'm thinking more about transformational leadership.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, how do I create that big vision, inspire
Hmm. Hmm.
people, right? Um, Create that team of teams instead of it being led by the CEO at the top. So, I don't know what it's going to be, but I do know that it's going to evolve. And I think that as leaders, we have to be prepared to morph back and forth to different types of leadership when they're needed. I really don't like when people say, I'm a transformational leader or I am a command and control leader. I'm like,
I get that.
yeah, I
It's
think you're
very
a leader.
situational, right? You need to adapt to
It
the
is.
situation that you find yourself in, primarily.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really believe that.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing probably that I see evolving a little bit is people want to more than ever belong to something. So
Hmm.
I think a leader's job more and more is going to be about creating movements, creating
Hmm. Hmm.
that movement that somebody wants to belong to. Not just coming. I noticed with the younger generation, they don't just want a job. They
Correct.
want something that is much more than just dollars and cents. So I think that's something that leaders really have to lean into is how am
Hmm.
I going to excite and ignite the next generation of people that
I think
are
that's
coming.
where visions become really important, no, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So if you were to give an advice to a budding manager or a leader, right? Let's pick three things that you would recommend them to do or
Yeah.
not do, right? What would that be?
Yeah, I think one would be to get a mentor, to
Okay.
definitely have a mentor. Two, I think the most important thing, one of the most important things we can do is learn as much as we can about human psychology. So one
Hmm.
of the things that I'm even learning more about now later in my career is we often treat human beings, I don't want to say like machines, but the fact is we're emotional beings. And if
Yep.
we're not able to tap into that and understand that,
Correct.
so understanding human psychology is really, really important. And then the third thing I would say is early as you can in your career, understand how to have crucial conversations. Those
Hmm.
conversations where you're truthful with people, you're not hurtful, but you're truthful, you're transparent, and you're coaching people and holding them accountable. Because most of us, back to the emotional human being, most
Correct.
humans aren't comfortable doing that. And that
Correct.
is the secret sauce, in my mind, to moving an organization forward is being able to have those great conversations
Yep.
internally, hold each other accountable.
Mm. I love that, Tom, because I keep giving this example to people when they ask that, hey, AI is going to replace us. And I keep telling them that, hey, AI might replace the tasks that you're doing, but it won't be able to replace the human connection. So that's why you need to have that human connection and human psychology thing nailed down, because without it, you are replaceable, but with it, you are not, right? I think
Yeah.
that's one of the most
Yeah.
crucial ingredient.
Yeah. And in this world you mentioned of exponential change, in my mind, the only competitive advantage you have left are people. Uh,
Absolutely.
Intellectual property, you look at
Correct.
some of it, it only lasts for 6 or 9 months before somebody invents something
Correct.
new. So I think,
Correct.
your real competitive advantage are your people. That's
Totally.
how you can have the best strategy in the world, all the cash in the world. If you don't have people,
True. True.
nothing's going to happen.
True. 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 Awesome. Tom, this was a lovely conversation. I am coming towards the end and I have a few rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
I will give it my best shot.
Awesome. So first thing that comes to your mind, all right. So the first question is, what is the one thing that you always look for someone when you're hiring them?
Their ability to be coached. So I'm going to say the word coachability.
Hmm. Got it. And what is the one thing that is a deal breaker for you to not hire somebody?
Um, the deal breaker would be extreme overconfidence.
Okay. Got it. And which book would you recommend to budding leaders as a must read?
Um, so I think all of John Maxwell's stuff is really, really good. And I would recommend a book called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, which is
Okay.
really a book about strategy, but there's a lot of leadership inside of that book. Easy to
Awesome.
read.
So this is a new one, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And my final question, let's say you're stuck on an island. Which leader, current, historical, or from your personal life, would you want to be there with you? And maybe which leader would you definitely not want to be there with you?
Whew.
The second one is a
So
little bit more controversial, but yeah, I'll still ask.
yeah. So I'm going to say the first one, this is not going to resonate with everybody, but the one I'd want with me right now is Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills quarterback. So he is an
Okay.
incredible leader of people, and I have great respect for him. Who I would not want to be with. Um, Man, I can't think off the top of my head. Probably somebody like a narcissistic.
Yeah.
I would say somebody like Hitler, I guess,
Ah,
is who
yeah.
I would want to
Okay.
be with, because
That
that's a
works.
hard one for me to think of. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there you go, folks. Thank you so much, Tom. I love this conversation. It was so candid, and thank you for opening up your life and journey to us in this short period of time.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you so much for having us on your podcast.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So, folks, Tom is really approachable on LinkedIn. In fact, we connected through a LinkedIn post on leadership. Tom wrote about it. I like that post. I just reached out to him and invited him to the podcast. So he's really reachable. Just find him on LinkedIn and maybe get him as a mentor for yourself.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks. Take care. Bye bye. Till the next time. See you. Bye bye.